the era of Donald Trump, has truth become stranger than fiction? This week, the 45th president tried and failed to buy Greenland and labeled American Jews who vote Democrat disloyal. What next from this commander-in-chief? Here at home, a murder charge pinned on the crooked cop responsible for the fatal Harding Street drug raid. Will the mayor and his police chief pay a political price come November? And 2 years have now passed since Hurricane Harvey battered the Bayou City. Is Houston, Texas any less vulnerable to the next powerful storm? I'm Greg Grugan, and welcome to Watch Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, legendary reporter turned investigative media consultant Wayne Dolcefino. Next up, legal analyst and Houston attorney Carmen Rowe. In the 3 spot, Bob Price, associate editor of Breitbart, Texas. Batting cleanup, former Democratic congressional candidate Laura Moser. Next up, Charles Blain, leader of the advocacy group Urban Reform. And closing us out on the hot corner, writer, educator, and radio host Antonio Diaz. Let's begin. As the President of the United States engages his estranged counterparts at this weekend's gathering of the G7, many Americans are still reeling from Mr. Trump's latest controversial remarks and actions. First, there's the out-of-left-field overture to buy Greenland, which covers an area of land slightly larger than Mexico. When Denmark flatly rejected the proposal as absurd, the president was offended and canceled a trip to Copenhagen. Never mind that Denmark mostly just protects Greenland and doesn't actually own the largely autonomous territory. And then there was the president's incendiary observations regarding Israel and American voters who happen to be Jewish.
I think any Jewish people that vote for a Democrat, I think it shows either a total lack of knowledge or great disloyalty. In my opinion, you vote for a Democrat, you're being very disloyal to Jewish people, and you're being very disloyal to Israel.
A new Associated Press poll released this week placed the president's approval rating at 36%, with 62% of respondents disapproving of Mr. Trump's performance. So with roughly 14 months until the next election, what are this president's prospects? I think I'm going to start with Laura Moser, who happens to be a Democrat and happens to be Jewish. Your thoughts?
Like 80% of my brethren. Yeah, I mean, Jews are traditionally devoted to social justice and like healing the world, as we call it, and therefore tend to vote. 80% of us voted against Donald Trump. To hear this rhetoric's not surprising. It's in line with everything he's been saying, calling us un-American, kind of saying that we don't belong in this country. And I am American. I am not Israeli. I'm not particularly fond of Israeli government policies. And I think that, he is setting up people like myself to be othered, as the people in universities say, and we've been the victims of lots of violence over the last year, and I think Jews are rightfully very concerned about this kind of commentary. And the Greenland stuff, I think, is a little different and more interesting. It's actually smart in a sad way to want to buy Greenland again, because the Arctic is melting, and there's lots of he can start opening casinos there if we don't curb the horrible things that we're doing there. So hooray, Denmark.
Okay, lots of oceanfront property, Wayno. You think this is an overreaction, I guess?
From you and from her, yes.
Yeah, we already had a fight about it.
No, we've already had a fight and we just started. Look, in disclosure, I was president of the B'nai B'rith Jewish Youth Organization in 1974. My mom's Jewish. I was raised Jewish. I went to synagogue, Jewish Community Center. I got to tell you something. We have got to stop taking every opinion someone makes and try to make some guilt culture out of it. Because Donald Trump was probably thinking about people being disloyal to Israel after hearing some of your fellow Democrats say the stupidest things about Jews, and instead of worrying about that, those people that are gaining traction in your party, you're trying to suggest that Donald Trump is like out to get the Jews, when quite honestly, he's probably the most pro-Israeli president we've had in like 100 years.
Israel, American Jews, not the same thing.
No,
period.
Of course it's not. Of course it's not. But to make that like he's like some call to like do something mean to Jews? Can't we all agree that people who do horrible things to people for whatever color, Jewish religion, ethnic reason are crazy nutbags? Why don't we just do that and move on and all sort of try to work together?
Okay, Tony, I know you're chomping at the bit on this.
I'm happy to explain this to folks. The dual loyalty is a stereotype, and if you don't understand the consequences, you might recall during World War II, Japanese Americans were put in internment camps because of racist reasons. Americans thought they, not Italians and not folks with the Germans, they thought that, and that's wrong across the board, but they thought that Japanese would have dual loyalty, and instead of being loyal to America, would be loyal to Japan, and they were put in internment camps. As a Mexican American, oftentimes, as I tell people, I'm as American as anyone else. They say, well, are you Mexican or American? And really, at the end of the day, we as Texans should get this, because I'm proud to be Texan. Texas is the greatest nation in the United States of America, but no one dare question us as Americans. It's the same ballgame. All we're asking is for us to be identified as full humans. Our president should know better, and he should speak the truth, and he should speak wisely and profoundly.
Okay, Bob Rice. I mean, look, to a lot of people, that sounds like a dog whistle. I mean, you think people are blowing this out of proportion?
I think the president is just accurately reflecting recent history where the Democratic Party has not been friendly at all to Israel, and particularly the last administration. And this administration has been very pro-Israel, and there's a very close tie there. And so the president is saying that, you know, if you're supporting Democrats, then you're supporting the destruction of Israel. You're siding with the comments made by Democrat Congress people that are incendiary against that. As far as the Greenland issue, we've been trying to buy Greenland since 1847, so this is nothing new. Harry Truman tried to buy it with $100 million in gold in 1946.
Okay, real quick, Laura.
The people who are slaughtering us in our houses of worship are not Democrats. They are right-wing nationalist terrorists, period. This kind of rhetoric stirs the pot and dehumanizes us and makes these future attacks more likely. And Trump knows it.
It's potent.
Blain, as these statements came out this week, what went through your head?
You know, it's been 5 years that he's commanded national attention, that he's ruffled feathers with his rhetoric. It's nothing new. We're used to it at this point. Going back a couple of years ago when he told black voters that they had nothing to lose if they voted for him, it's the same thing. It's fake outrage and then you get over it. But why don't we look at the things he's actually done over the past couple of years, like tax reform legislation, opportunity zone legislation, which helps distressed communities, the First Step Act, things that are important that actually matter to American people rather than the rhetoric that he continues to espouse.
Okay.
Babies in cages.
Carmen, I kept you for last because, you know, you kind of look at this from the outside in. You're not politically engaged, but deal with facts and the law. As this came down this week, you know, what went through your head?
I think it's calculated. I think it's propaganda for his campaign. I don't think it has to do with anything more than that. I mean, look, he's the president. He's gearing up for a campaign, and he's talking about Democratic voters who should be voting Republican. I think it's that simple. And everything else, I mean, I agree with the language and all that. That's a consistency with Trump. But as far as this issue, I think this is just a calculated campaign propaganda to get Democrats to start voting Republican or vote specifically Trump in 2020.
Okay,
that makes it worse. That really does make it worse.
I'm intrigued by why do we want Greenland? Any thoughts?
I'm sure it's a lovely place. I mean, I've never been there personally. Look, what's wrong with wanting to get someplace that's very strategically important? And I know it's melting, and I know that's. I mean, I feel bad for that. I really do.
They don't want to be bought. That's the problem.
I'm sure that's my.
It's Trump colonialism.
I'm sure the fact that Greenland is melting is somehow going to be my fault as somebody who's an ancestor of Europeans too. I don't know. I just think, who cares?
10 seconds, Bob.
Well, there's a lot of mineral resources there. There are tremendous shipping opportunities, and it's a strategic military interest to the United States.
They're not for sale. Again,
And
you
once
can't
they're
buy
out,
people who don't want to be
All right, we're going to leave it there.